Hi everybody, thank you for joining us today on the 15th of April to question and answers on YouTube. My voice went then, my goodness me. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. So my name's Andrew Berry, excuse me a second. My name's Andrew Berry. I'm a goldsmith, I'm a jeweller here in South Wales. In the United Kingdom, we also run atthebench.com, which is our online jewellery training website down by here, as you can see. And we're just here to answer some questions over the next hour. You may have noticed something a little bit different behind me. I'm pleased to say that, as you can see, if we can just go out. Look, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Look at that. That's really nice, isn't it? So yeah, so we've done a bit more of to the recording studio. We've made it look a bit more pretty, a bit more presentable, a nice bit of a background. And we've got these little, what do you call, crates on the wall. And over the next hour, if you're on there, just give me some ideas of what I can put in these little crates. We've got these little glass jars with plastic IKEA flowers for now, but they're just a temporary thing. So just give me some ideas of what we can put in here, decorative or something that could be quite useful as well. We've got Louise, she is on the chat today, so she's mic'd up as well, which you'll be pleased to know. Hope that's going to work and she doesn't make too much grumbles and moans in between the... Yes. Okay. So first question, we had somebody ask about the torches, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Go on.
Yeah. Nancy is asking, I noticed you using a handheld torch. What type of fuel does it take?
Okay. So these little torches take butane. These are little handheld creme brulee torches. So butane is the stuff you get in the little disposable canisters that you can buy in, actually, newsagents and supermarkets. The what's it called? The fuel, the butane goes in the handle and you're limited to obviously that capacity. Butane is okay if you're starting in these little torches. It doesn't burn at a greater heat. Propane burns at a higher heat, but then you can't put propane in these little handheld torches. But these are butane. If you want to go up into bigger torches, well then yes you can with the separate gas canisters, that's propane. But these little handheld ones are butane and they're ideal for little jobs on the bench as we got here. Yes, Louise, next question.
Another question from Nancy. How do you know what angle degree of bearing burr to use and what is the most common?
Yeah, good question. So bearing burrs. In fact, I was prepared for this and I've drawn some little diagrams. So what we've got a diamond. This is your diamond shape. Let me see if I can get this camera a little bit better. Wide angle shot. There we go. Okay, so this is your diamond here. The diamond obviously has this outer edge here. Usually this is around about 90 degrees. So if you're using a straight-sided setting burr, to come down, this is the claw, this is your prong. You would come down and then you have this angle here. And the stone would actually sit in this area by here. So that's one way, and then the claw would be pushed over onto the stone. Or alternatively, if you use a 90-degree setting burr, so this angle here sort of replicates the same angle as the stone. And when you cut into the side of the claw of your prong, you get this taken out of the prong, which really does match approximately the same as the stone here. You can get a 60-degree burr as well that is a little bit shallower, a little bit more of an acute cut, but that really is not sort of ideally suited to stones because of the angle here is only 60 degrees as opposed to 90 degrees. But sometimes you also get stones that are really, really deep as well to add a bit of colour. So then what you'd have to do is just remove a bit more of the claw, a bit more of the prong down here with the burr, just so this part of the stone here sits nicely into the claw or the prong itself. But usually a 90-degree setting burr, this angle is the right shape for the stone itself. So I hope that helps. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Bunglebay. If you were to make a ring out of tube, 1, how would you form shape without distorting the tube? And 2, when soldering ends together, is there a risk of cracking because of hot air inside?
Okay, so you don't often make rings from tubes. You really make up a strip, then you bend the strip around then to make a tube. If you had, say, a copper pipe, you can cut a section off a copper pipe and you've already got your little ring. You can enlarge that by tapping it on your your mandrel, something like this, which is slightly tapered. I can go onto a close-up camera now. You can get that in a little bit closer. So which is slightly tapered. So what you'd have to do is when you put the ring comes down here, it's got a slight taper to it. You take it off, you turn it over, you put it back down onto the mandrel itself. So that would be one way. As I said, the other way, the correct way, is to get the correct length strip first of all, then you bend that round and you solder the join. You solder it then with whatever metal alloy, metal solder the strip is, and then you clean it up and you just tap it round. You don't really have to stretch it much bigger or reduce it smaller, because that length that you just cut should be the right size. So you shouldn't have any splitting on the joint. If you do have splitting on the joint, it wasn't a very good solder joint, and you should watch more films on At the Bench showing you how to solder correctly. Yes, Louise.
Question now from what I think is one of our youngest viewers here today, and it's Lee. He's asking, on average, how long does it take you to make a ring? Hi, Lee.
To make up, say, like a plain wedding band or plain band ring without any pattern or any decoration, anything like that, I suppose you could do it within, say, half an hour, from cutting the strip to soldering it to filing it to buffing it to polishing the whole thing. So yeah, say 20 minutes, half an hour to make a plain band. If you want to make something a bit more complicated, perhaps set some stones into it, perhaps it take like an hour or so. Or if you've got something really, really complicated with lots of claws and lots of stones and lots of decoration, engraving, that sort of thing, it could actually take you a couple of days. So the quickest answer, plain band, about half an hour. Hello, Lee.
And a question from Becky, who's asking, have you ever seriously injured yourself making a piece of jewellery?
I often cut myself. Seriously, I don't know. Recently, let me just zoom on this little close-up camera. I've had lots of cuts recently. I got a nasty little cut on my finger here. This nasty, and I've also got a little bit of a finger protector here because I actually caught my thumb on a piece of equipment this morning. The worst sort of burn that I really had, I suppose, a bit last year, wasn't it?
Christmas before last.
Yeah. Was I had the GRS little system by here, little system to hold the rings and so forth, and it had like a Formica or like a Bakelite handle on the side. What I did was I was working away, I was soldering, working away, and then I was distracted. I looked to one side and I still had the torch going, and the torch was actually on the plastic handle that you tighten up the piece with. So I was looking away, I put the torch down, and I went to grab the handle to loosen the benchmate, and that molten plastic went all over my palm, all the way down here. And I think that was about the worst thing that I've ever done, really. And that blistered up completely. And Sharon, one of the ladies who works for me, she said, put some honey on it and bandage it up. And we sort of laughed, didn't we? We sort of said, oh, honey. She said, absolutely. She said, put some honey on it, bandage it up, and then every couple of days, then take it off, put some fresh honey on, put the bandage back on. And I must admit, literally within a week, it had not healed, but it had really...
It's remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really was good. So if you do have a really bad burn or anything like that, a little bit of honey under the plaster, under the bandage works well. But I think that was about the worst. But I'm often cutting myself and stabbing myself, not on purpose, obviously, but accidentally. And that's just parts of the trade, I'm afraid. You just hurt yourself time to time. Good question. Yeah, next question.
Question now from somebody in Turkey. What is the best way to make my own bezel wire without purchasing a ready one? They are not selling bezel wires in Turkey. It is quite difficult to cut such a thin layer perfectly even and sound.
So the best way to do it is to make it from two pieces of metal. Let me draw this again for you. So we will have two pieces of wire. Let me have a look. Let me try and draw this way. So we have one piece of wire that is rectangular section. Okay, so that's your one piece of wire here. And then what you would do is get another piece of wire, another rectangular section, and you'd solder it onto there. So you have two separate sections of wire. This is your first one, this is your second one. So the sort of distance here would be, say, roughly around 0.5 millimeter, and perhaps this would be 0.5 millimeter as well. And then whatever depth you want your pieces to be. So that then would be your profile that you would end up with. And that would be then your bearing wire. And then your stone then would sit on here. Obviously, then you'd bend this round into an oval shape or a round shape. And that would be your best where I wouldn't try and grind out a groove. You're never going to get that successfully even all the way along. You're not going to get the right sort of width across the tops when the metal burnishes over onto the stone. It's never going to look right. But make it from two different pieces like this. So that's your one piece. That's your other piece. You solder them together like that, and you've got a nice ledge. And that then is your profile of your bearing wire, and you can bend that around into the right shape that you want. And then you can make it whatever you want. You can make it whatever height you want, whatever thickness you want as well. And if you didn't want a flat edge here, well, then you can always, in the first place, just file a bit of an angle on that inner piece for the stone to sit on if it's not a flat backed. So there we go, a nice easy way of making bearing wire. If you do solder it, make sure you solder it with some hard solder first of all, just so then when you carry on doing some other soldering operations, then that solder doesn't come undone. But that would be the best and the easiest way to make it a bearing wire. Next question, please.
Lourdes in Miami is asking, can you recommend a book that will explain about the different metals? Most books out there now are pretty good. The best sort of book out there for someone learning to make jewelry is The Complete Metalsmith by Tim McCreet. Really, really good book, goes into a lot of detail, not too complicated, nice, simple drawings and so forth. I think the student edition has a ring binder on the spine. I think even that one may come with a little DVD as well that you can play. That is really good. That gets into all different types of jewelry making. If you really want to get into the sort of the science of things, there's a book called Oppie. His name is Oppie Untracked, and that's Jewelry Concepts and Technologies. It's a gorgeous thick book. It's about £50. And there's some other books called I think is it Goldsmithing by another guy. He's a German guy. Right, I can't remember the exact title, but if you scroll back through some of my past videos on YouTube, I do go into some detail on some books. I think the first books that I ever bought when I was in uni, and some of the more advanced books as well. So have a scroll back on some previous one. I think it was about 8-9 months ago, and there's books on there, the titles are on there, and there's also links in the description to go and buy the books on Amazon as well. But check them out. But the best book is The Complete Metalsmith by Tim McCreet. But good question, good question. Yes, please. Jade is asking, what area within jewelry do you most like working on?
I love the idea, and I love seeing people draw and create and design. I love seeing some fantastic drawings that are coloured in using watercolours and so forth. And I wish I could sort of have the time to sit down and spend and sort of do that sort of thing. But I just sort of like to just start creating. Perhaps I'll work with some silver. Perhaps I'll get some ideas in my head. I get some wax perhaps and start creating. I do like that sort of process where you can sort of turn something that, you know, you may get a bit of paper and you think, well, how do I get this particular type of shape of band? Let me get a bit of paper, cut that into a different shape, fold it round. Is that the sort of look that I'm after? If not, you can refine the paper or cut a new bit of paper out and just go through it that way. And I like that, and building up an idea, because you can come up with these fantastic ideas on paper, some gorgeous designs on paper, but it's translating that design from a flat piece of paper to 3 dimensions. It's the same if you're using, say, CAD software. Some brilliant CAD software out there, but there's nothing like getting your hands cut and dirty and getting the feel of the metal, seeing how the metal moves, seeing how it melts, try and join it. What's the best way of doing this? What's the best way of doing that? Is it best to do this in wax and cast it? Basically, what can we do? And that's the part that I like. And then the other part that I really like is actually come to polish it and trying to polish it to perfection and get rid of all the scratches and the marks. And then the item comes out of the outer side there and it's gleaming, it's glowing, it's absolutely gorgeous. So those are the two areas that I like, the initial creation and the actual final bit. Sometimes I get a bit bored in between, but the beginning and the end are usually the best types of sort of part of job that I actually quite like. Have we had any ideas about what we need to put into these yet? Have we got,
seen any, no.
What can we put in these? We thought of putting some like tools, some nice little tools in these sort of boxes here, just so it looks quite pretty, but we haven't had anything, have we?
Nothing else yet, no, that I can see.
Okay, no worries. Okay, next question.
Right, I've lost my place now.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Right, Amanda is asking, could you explain the saw blade choice as to the thickness of metal you are cutting?
Okay, another good question. It's very difficult to, you can do it in theory, but it's very difficult in practice. I'm really lazy. I don't like to change my blades in my saw blade. I will just have one saw, or perhaps two saws, but the same blade is in both saws, and it's a 3-stroke naught. It's 3-stroke 0. It's a medium thickness blade, and I use that for virtually everything because I'm too lazy to change it. Now, why would you want to change your blade? Well, usually if you've got a thin piece of metal, you should always use a blade that's quite fine, that's quite thin. And I'll come to the reason why that. And then if you go for a nice thick bit of metal, say you want to cut through a piece of stock, quite thick, perhaps 4, 5, 6 mil thick even, you should use a blade that's quite big, that's quite coarse. So why would you need to do that? Because I got my pad today, it's coming to very, very handy. So the idea is what you should have is 3 teeth in contact with the metal at all times. So we've got the teeth that would look like this. That way, make on the close-up camera so we can actually see what I'm doing here. Oh my gosh, which I can't draw. So this is my blade. Terrible, terrible drawing here. So the idea is you've got, this is a tooth, this is a tooth, this is a tooth. You should have at least 3 teeth in contact with the metal, and this is my piece of metal, at all times. Because if you don't and you have like perhaps 1 or 2 teeth, perhaps you've got quite a thick blade and a thin bit of metal, it's not going to cut right. It's not going to go up and down. It's going to chatter. It's going to catch, and it's not going to cut at all. If you have more teeth in contact with the metal, nothing wrong with that, but the teeth are quite fine and it's not going to cut fast enough. You could have a piece of metal that is this size, and you've got loads and loads of teeth in contact with the metal, but you're going to be there for hours. You're going to be there for hours. So the idea is 3 teeth have to be in contact with that chunk of metal all the time. That's the theory. But in practice, I don't bother doing that. I keep that one blade. If I am doing some very delicate piercing, perhaps I want to cut out perhaps part of a basket work that goes underneath the setting, or you've got a gorgeous pendant with some really, really fine detail, well then yes, you'd have to use a finer blade to get into that detail. We've been doing quite a few names, cutting out names on for pendants, and some of the E's, the little bit of an E and then or the L where it loops across are really quite fine. So you don't want too thick a blade for that. You want quite a fine blade. But I just use this 3-stroke-o. Some people will use a 2-stroke-o, and then usually if this is a bit of metal, this is your saw blade, and if there's perhaps only 2 teeth in contact with the blade this way, if you angle the blade this way, you've got more of the blade in contact with the metal, so then you should be okay. So that's what I do as a bit of a cheat. If I've got a thin bit of metal, but I don't want to bother changing my saw blade, I just angle the blade if I'm cutting forwards because there's more teeth in contact with the metal. If I come to a corner and I have to bring the blade upright, I'm a little bit stuck. But usually 3 teeth in contact with the metal at all times, but no fewer. Good question.
Okay,
yeah.
Next question is from Helly in Wiltshire, and she's asking, I made a piece with a brass design welded onto a silver base. There's a weird grey shadow on the silver around the brass shape, and though I can't for the life of me polish it out.
Okay, so it sounds like a bit of fire scale. Check out the last film on YouTube that we did with regards to fire scale. It's It's where the oxygen from the flame affects the surface of the silver. The silver, because it's stirred in silver and there's copper in it, the copper will oxidize with oxygen. And it's oxygen being drawn in through the nozzle on your torches. And there's sometimes too much oxygen, or you've been trying to solder it for a long time and the silver absorbs the oxygen and the copper oxidizes. You will not be able to polish it out. You actually physically have to file it or get a buff stick like this, or get something like an emery paper or a Scotch-Brite wheel to actually physically remove that layer. It's only like sort of microscopic, but it's quite a hard layer. You can't really polish it out because that little section that you can see, it's like a grey cloud or a purpley cloud. That is the oxide, and that has to be removed. Sometimes you can quench it in acid, but all the quenching does is just gets rid of the very, very thin layer on the top, but that oxide is still underneath. So you won't really remove it by quenching it. You physically have to remove it by files, by emery paper, with say, your 3M wheels in your Dremel or your pendant motor. Physically abrade it, then once you've got rid of it, polish it. Sometimes you'll see a little bit left. You need to go back, redo it, rebuff it, repolish it, and you should be able to get rid of it. Or the best thing to do, sorry, you're ready to the next question. Or what you would do is prevent it in the first place by putting some flux over the whole surface. So the torch is coming down and the torch is not, or the flame is not actually touching the silver underneath. So the silver cannot absorb the oxygen from the flame, but yet the piece is still being heated up. So really prevention is better than a cure, but just check back on the last film we did. I think I put it out last week, all about fire scale. I talked over half an hour. So it's a really good film. So go and check that out at the end of this question and answer. But yeah, nice, good question. Excellent. Next one.
Okay, more questions on soldering. This one is Helly again. Any advice on how to solder tiny jump rings onto bigger silver pieces? I always mess it up and can't get the solder to flow. Jump rings are an evil, evil thing.
Okay, so what you want to do in this instance is not put the flame anywhere near the jump ring, because the piece that you're soldering the jump ring onto is obviously bigger. I use my soldering block for an example. So say that is your piece that you want to solder a little jump ring onto. I mean, I can actually use and say the lid of my pickle pot is my jump ring. Okay, so you've got your jump ring, although there'll be a hole in the middle, and you've got your piece, your pendant. Now, what you want to do, first of all, is just file a little bit of a flat on the bottom of your jump ring. So then you get a better contact with the pendant. That's your first thing you need to do. Don't try and do this because the point of contact is very minimal. You want to be able to put a flat so it sits further down, greater point of contact. That's your first thing. Then get your flame. Don't put your flame up here. Your flame will melt the jump ring completely before you've even gone anywhere further. It's not even going to work because the mass of your jump ring is smaller. The amount of metal in the jump ring is smaller than the pendant it's being soldered onto. So what you would do is aim your flame down here. Aim your flame on the piece, your bigger part of the metal, the biggest mass. Heat this up. And if this jump ring is in contact with your mass you're heating up, the heat will be transferred up to the jump ring without the torch even touching the jump ring. Pre-solder the jump ring first of all as well. So pre-solder the jump ring. Ooh, yes.
So we're getting some complaints that there's a problem with the sound.
Okay, of me or of you?
Guys, is it me or is it Andrew? Because well, you're obviously talking more than me. Bit of a reverb. Can somebody pop up and give us some feedback on what the problem with the sound?
Okay, I'll carry on. Yep.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll knock you off a minute. Let me have a look. Right, I've knocked you off a minute. See if that helps. Could maybe picking up the different mics, perhaps. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, thank you. Okay, so I will put you back on this. Okay.
The speaker machine. Oh, it's fine now. Oh, great. Okay.
There we go.
You muted me. I'll just talk louder. It's okay. All right, guys.
Okay, so the reverb. Yeah. Okay. So the best thing to do here. Yes. So we got the jump ring. So heat this area. This area then will be heated up and the heat will transfer up to the jump ring. But as I said, just pre-solder the jump ring put the jump ring on your pad, melt a little bit of solder onto the bottom of the jump ring first, then put your jump ring on the top. And when you're jumping on the top, flux here, heat this up. The heat then will come up to the jump ring here. Once this is all the correct heat, the solder will simply flow from the jump ring onto the main piece. But if you put your torch up here, this is going to melt. Put the torch down here onto the greater mass and the heat will travel up. You may want to just bring your torch up from time to time just to warm up the jump ring, but that's your best thing to do. And then when the temperature is correct, the solder will melt from the jump ring down onto the mass or the pendant that you're actually soldering. But yeah, good question. You're on.
Okay, I've lost my place again. I'm sorry. Okay. Deb is asking, I want to invest in a few gravers for fancying up bezel settings, etc. What kind or size do you recommend if I were to purchase just 3?
Gravers.
Gravers, yeah.
Do you know what? I really don't know. I sizes I would buy. Let me just think. For stone setting, yep. Is it Lou for stone setting?
Fancying at bezel settings, yeah.
Okay, so what I would do is just simply buy one that is that sort of shape. Simple like that. This sort of shape. This is roughly around about a 60-degree angle, perhaps a 45-degree angle here. So this is the shape that I would buy. This width here can be about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, something like that. But then what I would do is grind out this little section here. So I'd grind out that. So this would be then the cutting face down here. And this would be the graver. So all this would be the graver. So then all you've got to do is just sharpen this little front edge here every time you want to do it. Something like that would be ideal for just tidying up the insides of bezels or the edge of the bezel. Yeah, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, it doesn't really matter too much because all you're really using is the edge. So something like that would be ideal. There are other shapes you can get, sort of this sort of shape, like I think that people call these like spit sticks, something like this. This sort of shape. I don't normally tend to use these, although again, you should always cut these down so they are ending up into this sort of shape. You should always grind your gravers into these sort of shapes, because then you've got a very, very small little area that you need to make sure they're nice and polished as opposed to the whole face of the engraver. So yeah, I can't remember what these, I'm sure this one's called a spit stick. This one by here, this is called a spit stick. Do you know what? I really can't remember what these are called. Scorpers? I'm really not sure. I'm not really fantastic with names of engravers. But something like that would be ideal, but make sure it is really, really polished. Make sure that the face here is polished, and make sure the underside here is polished to perfection as well. Because then if it's nicely polished, when you start to engrave around and tidy up the edge of the bezel, the smoothness and the polish on the engraver will be imparted onto the edge of the bezel. But those two are really sort of the most popular to tidy up the edge of the bezel. Yes, please.
Okay, this is a question from Matthew, who is asking, what was the first thing you made that really got you hooked on this?
I've made a couple of things when I was in university. We sort of did metal work, and I liked working with metal because it was very forgiving. You had to force it, you had to bend it and shape it. The first thing that I made was, I was really into granulation. I love the idea of making granules and then soldering them onto pieces. And I've actually still got it downstairs in the workshop, and it is like a bracelet, little square little sections. And they were hinged. I like doing hinges as well. And they were all hinged. So I had a little plate. I had about 3 little knuckles, 3 separate sections. So they were like almost very flexible. And then another plate. And on each of those plates, I did loads and loads of granulation all over it. Various different sizes. I did a bracelet and I made the catch, and then I made a necklace as well to go with it. Although I didn't really like the necklace. The necklace was a bit naff. But the bracelet that I did, and I've got it downstairs in the workshop still. I still don't want to melt it down because it was my first real piece. And it weighs quite a bit. I think it cost me quite a bit of money back in the 80s. But yeah, a bracelet, granulation, and yes, I still have it. And I still got a few other pieces that I made all those years ago as well. But that was the most important piece. And I really got hooked. I liked the idea of the granulation, the hinges, the technical aspects, the working out dimensions, and trying to put it all together to make something that was really pleasing to the eye. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that I made the first time round, yes.
While we're on granulation, Melina is asking, have you done colloidal granulation? Colloidal, am I saying that right?
Colloidal?
Colloidal? With copper sulfate or something similar.
Oh, okay, so.
I can't get the balls to attach.
Okay, so no, I haven't. It's by using, it's like guar gum and gum tragacanth or something like that, and copper sulfate. Yeah, it is actually where you use the chemicals, and it reduces the melting points where the points touch, so there's no solder involved. You warm it up, and there's a chemical reaction. It lowers the melting point between the two surfaces, and they will just slightly fuse. I haven't done it, no. I've always wanted to do it, but I've never been able to get my hands on the actual materials, the chemicals in small enough quantities just to play around with. I know you have to buy big sort of quantities, but I would love to try it one day. And also I did quite like the idea of when you melt down the granules by putting little snippets in little layers of powdered charcoal, or little snippets in a layer of powdered charcoal, little snippets, and put that into a kiln. So then when it gets hot enough, the balls will actually be perfectly round, and they will all be shiny as well because of the carbon. Yeah, the carbon in the charcoal will make them nicely rounded. There's no flat spots like you get if you melt them on your block, and they'd be perfectly shiny because of the atmosphere of the carbon as well. It wouldn't oxidize. And I did have a go at that with the baked bean tin in the kiln, and it didn't work. I think the carbon from the charcoal disintegrated the baked bean tin, and it really made a right mess in the kiln. And I wasn't looked upon favorably because of that. But no, I'd love to try it, but I haven't tried it. And I've read all about it. I'd still love to try it one day. Good question. Yes, please.
Next question is from Gary in Texas. And he's asking, what is the best solder to use when attaching sterling silver to bronze? Also, how much vacuum is necessary to evacuate air from investment?
Okay, so the best solder, I think you'd still have to use something like a silver solder, and it would have to be like a hard or a medium solder to brass, you said. Was it brass?
Sterling silver to bronze.
To bronze, yeah. I think it would have to be a sterling silver, nothing lower than an easy. I know you maybe get sort of lead-based solders, or I wouldn't even want to go there with that, but you'd have to use, perhaps I wouldn't even use a hard, perhaps I'd try a medium solder when you come to do that. But medium solder would be best. How much vacuum do you need to invest? I'm not quite sure what it goes to, but I think it should be at least 20 PSI. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to have a look at my investing machine to find out what's on the dial. But I think it's a lot. It goes right round the dial, and it does go off the dial when it's sucking out the investment. But it's got to be at least, in fact, let me just have a quick look. Just bear with me a second. But what can I put in these boxes? Give me 2 seconds. I've got to run into the room. I know you can all hear me. I'm going to have a look now. What are we on? It says 25, 30 centimeters per HG. Yeah, 30 IN-HG. Whatever that is, whatever HG is. But yeah, 30 or 76. Can't really make out what they are. So yeah, it has to be quite a bit. So there we go. That helps. Yeah.
Okay, next, Gaudi, I like this question. How do you price your work?
Okay, we could have a whole question and answer on this because it is a really good subject and it's open to a lot of interpretation. It would take me quite a while to go into it, but the gist of it is you have to sit down for a long time working out exactly what your costs are, depending on if you're a hobbyist or if you've got a shop or a workshop and so forth. Depends then really on what you should be charging. So what you'd have to do is look at all your overheads, your fixed overheads. That's like your lighting, your rent, your rates, your gas, your fixed. Something that is fixed every single week or every single month is the same. That's fixed. Your variable rates would be other aspects. So you'd have to get all those together. You'd have to work out throughout the whole of the year, how many weeks are you going to work? You're not going to work 52 weeks of the year, although Louise would tell me if I could, I would. So you say you want 4 weeks off. You've got 48 weeks. Those 48 weeks you're going to work. You have to work out then, out of those 48 weeks, how many hours you're working. You've got your total of fixed costs. You've got your hours. You divide one into the other. You come up with a figure. As I said, we can spend hours talking about this. You've got a set figure. Have to work out throughout the space of a day, how much of that day are you productive? Say you go to work 9, you come home at 5 o'clock. That's 8 hours. But you don't work 8 hours at the bench, do you? You may have 2 or 3 hours off for doing some paperwork. You've got an hour off for lunch. So perhaps you're only working 4 hours, 5 hours maximum being creative. So you have to work out how much each hour is worth to cover your fixed costs. So you have to earn that every single hour to pay off your fixed costs. Then you've got your other costs involved, like something like gas or your actual silver. And plus you actually want to make some money at the end of it, not just cover your costs. So you have to work out all these different variables when it comes to a piece. As I said, there's lots of information out there on the net. I think I did a little film on At the Bench, going into the whole detail of all the costs you've got to think about. Insurance, you've got to think about perhaps branding, perhaps nice clothes, nice aprons that you wear at the bench to protect yourself. You've got to think about the bench, your tools. You've got to think about depreciation of your tools as well. You know, how long do these pliers last you? They may last you 5 years. So if you spent £20 on a pair of pliers and they last you 10 years, so each year is worth £2. So you have to think about all these different things, exactly how long your tools are going to last you. How much solder do you use when you come to make a piece as well? And do you just want to cover your costs when it comes to silver or your gold? No, you should times that by a percentage. Some people times that by 2, some people times it by 3. Don't go by the weight of the finished piece either, because there's bits and pieces that you lose in your Lemel tray and so forth. So I would basically buy silver for a particular job. That is how much I would charge for that silver. If I've got some Lemel, some bits of dust or some cut-offs or some spare bits, that's great. That's mine. That doesn't go back to the customer, but that's my little bit of a perk when I have that. The customer pays for the amount of metal that I buy for them, not necessarily what is the item weight. But obviously don't go mad and buy a huge bit of silver, but only use a small little bit. Don't go mad. But there's lots of different formulas that you can work on. And then quickly, that's as best as I can say. As I said, if you are a member of At the Bench, there is a whole film or 2 films going through the whole process. And again, perhaps I can spend an hour going through this as well on YouTube, and that would be quite a good idea for a future film, I think, as well. But yeah, but very good question. You're on.
Julie is asking, saying probably a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question, Julie. When using a rolling mill, could you compress, for example, gold wire into a piece of silver?
And make the gold wire stay in the silver, I expect. Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah. Not really, because what is going into the metal can easily come out of the metal. What the best thing to do would be, oh, I've got some paper today. The best thing to do would be is have your surface of metal. Here's your metal. This is at the edge of the metal. I'll use my block again. So this is the edge of the metal here. You get a burr and you cut a little channel going through the metal. So this is the channel that the wire, so you got some round wire here, that wire is going to go into here. But what you want to do is make a little bit of, can you see that? Yeah. You want to make a little bit of an undercut like this, like that. So when you force the wire into that here, and here it is here in place. When you hammer this down and hammer this in this direction here, it forces the wire down, and at the bottom of the wire spreads out underneath the channel, and that will hold the wire in place. If you simply have a piece of metal and you have a piece of wire on top and you force that wire down, this wire is going to become slightly oval, and it's only going to do this. It's only going to push into the metal, and that metal, the round wire, will simply come out, and there's no way you're going to get that to stick in. So the best way to do an inlay is to cut a channel, whether you want to use a graver or whether you want to use a burr to make that channel or the shape you want, but get the undercuts, hammer the wire in, the wire will spread out, and then it won't come out of the sheet that you're actually putting it into. Hope that helps. Yes, Louis, next question.
Kima is asking, how can I prevent diamonds falling out of a pave setting?
Just make sure. Now, this is the thing that I had problems with years and years ago. I really wasn't setting the stones deep enough. I always wanted to just set them slightly below the surface, but there was never enough metal coming over the edge of the stone to hold that stone in place. So nowadays I set the stone lower than what I used to. So there's always that little bit of metal coming over the edge. And a bit of paper again. When it comes to the little diamond shapes, little diamonds that you have like this here, when you set that diamond into, say, a plate, try and get the diamond, if it's a 2 millimeters or less, try and get that diamond so the top of the plate or top of the setting is to the top of the stone. So you've got this amount of metal here. So you cut your little prongs in whatever way. So this little here will come over the stone that way. If you have a huge stone, you don't want to have too much metal coming above, but up to 2 millimeters, the area that you've got here, this is the top of the stone here should be level with the surface, and then you should have enough metal coming over the stone. And that really is the trick. Don't try and set them too shallow. There's not enough metal. You need to set it lower. The bigger the stone, the higher the stone can be, but up to 2 millimeters, the surface has to be the same height as the table. Then you've got enough metal, then you can use a little engraver to ease the metal over, or you could actually use a beading tool to get onto the edge there, just to spin the beading tool, just so the claw, a little bit of metal comes onto the stone, rounds it so it's nice and shiny. But yeah, don't set the stones too narrow. Hope that helps. Yes, please.
Another Andrew is asking, could you please point out the hottest part of a propane torch, please? Okay,
yes, the hottest part. Let me have a look. Let me see if I can do this. I'm able to turn this light off up there. Is that any better? Oh, that's a bit better, isn't it? Here we go. So can we actually see into this one here? So my little trick is you can put the flame away here, and we've got this, and not much is really happening on the block. But as you come closer to the block, you can see that glow just appearing. Yeah. So it's getting hotter. It's getting hotter. It's getting a bit more intense. We go closer. You can see now how hot that flame is. Okay. That is the part of the flame is the hottest. If you go further, a little black dot will appear in the middle. Okay. So that is not good. Bring it back. That is the best part. And if I can show you, I've got a different bench set up here. So let me see if I can show you here. So if I put that there, you may be able to see. Okay, so this part over here is the flame as well, okay? This is damn hot. You'll burn yourself if you put your finger by there. And it is producing a little bit of color on the block. The best part is just by here. You can just see where it's dark behind me here, where that little light blue area comes through. That is the hottest part. Go further up, and you can see a little bit of an inner cone by here. If you go further away, it's still hot, but not as hot. So, as I said, you go nearer, you get that. That is the hottest part there. come further away, the intensity lessens. You go nearer, the intensity increases, but then it goes too far, and you get that little bit of a black circle. That is oxygen. That is not the hottest part. Come back to the tip of the blue flame, which is by here, the lighter blue flame. That is the hottest part of the flame. Let me get my lights back on. There we go. There we go. And that applies to every flame as well. If you have a torch that has oxygen, you can increase the oxygen, but the flame, the shape is always the same. It's the tip of the lightest blue part is the hottest part of the flame. Hope that helps. Yes, please.
Like a science lesson. Bully and Bully is asking, I love making folded rings. Do you ever make folded rings, coin ring style?
Oh, no, I've never made a coin ring. I've always fancied doing it. I just never really got around to actually doing it. That's where, and in fact, that's how a lot of the wedding rings are actually made as well, out of seam. Sometimes they're made out of seamless tubing. Sometimes they're actually stamped out of a sheet. They're stamped out, it's basically like a washer. You stamp it out, you stamp the hole out of the middle, you get like a washer shape. You put that, say, down a mandrel, or you put it into a conical die to force that washer into that sort of conical shape. Then you can hammer it and shape it to make it nicely a seamless tube, basically. Yeah, it's really big. A guy called Jason in America, he's developed his own tools that enables you to do these things. It's all quite not automated, but it's all precision done. He's got the tools to fit the different coins that he does. He puts it in the die, you stamp out the section of the middle, and then he's got tools then to shape that as well into a ring. But no, I'd love to try it. I've never really sort of had the time. Perhaps I should have a bit of a play one day. But yeah, again, there's lots of films on YouTube showing how to make coin rings like that. But yeah, really good. I wouldn't mind trying.
Hiroko is asking, after you started working in the jewellery studio, what moment did you feel like you became a decent jeweller?
Oh my gosh, decent. I think that's it. I think it is a continual learning. I think when you can start to talk with authority, just even to a customer comes in, you have to make sure that you know what you're doing and what you're talking about. You can't waffle or give them any rubbish. What you say has to be true. And I think when you can start to converse, and things come really naturally. You can read books. I got loads and loads of books. I must have like over 100 books on jewelry making, and I just love them. I just read them all, because the more you read, the more you absorb the information. And with that information, that is tremendous knowledge that you can then impart upon like yourselves or a customer that comes to the shop, or even if you try to teach someone or show someone how to make something. So what point did I become proficient, perhaps enough to be confident? I suppose once you've sort of melted a few pieces by accident and you've learned what to do, how to correct mistakes. And I think the more you practice, the more you read, the more confident you become. And I know Jason, who works for me, he still isn't confident, even though he's been here for 10 years, he isn't really confident about doing certain pieces of work. But the problem is he won't do them. And the only way to gain your confidence is by actually doing the work, and perhaps sort of buying some scrap silver in, or just practicing and understand what is happening to the metal. You know when it's going to melt, you know how far the metal can bend before it breaks, and it's all this knowledge. So I think at what stage, I did 3 years in university, I came out and I sort of set up my own business perhaps a year or so later, and I had to come across as being confident to the customer. But I think it must have been a good 2, 3, 4 years after that I really felt really confident that perhaps I can sit in front of somebody and show them how to make something without making mistakes. And I think that's the thing. If you can make something knowing how a piece is going to be made without making too many mistakes, then I think you're pretty confident enough. And I think that took me about another 2, 3, 4 years after. So I suppose about 6, 7 years of working, I was really confident enough to come across as perhaps being proficient and not a master, because no one's going to be a master jeweler for a long time. And you don't call yourself a master jeweler. It's other people calling you a master jeweler. If you call yourself a master jeweler, really, you're not. So we'll stop there. Louise is telling me to crack on. Okay, next question.
Vince is asking,
not my father, is this?
No, it's not your father. I don't think it's your father unless he's changed his surname. He's saying, I see that microscopes are becoming very widespread in the industry. Do you see a real need for one?
Yeah, it's like things like optivisors. Haven't got mine to hand. People say, I don't need optivisors. My eyesight is good enough. But my argument is that, yeah, I'm not quite sure where it is, actually, my optivisor. Is it? Oh, in fact, there's two over there. Can you manage? We changed the studio around. Yeah, people say you don't need people say you don't often need an optivisor, but an optivisor is one of these. I wear them all the time. My eyes are getting a little bit old now. And my argument is that you have an optivisor. It's like a microscope. If you can use that and you can produce your best work using that, which is a bit of a magnification, when you actually show the customer, it's absolutely fantastic. There are no blemishes, there are no marks, because you can actually see the detail with this. Yes, I do have a microscope downstairs. It's a Meiji. And that is really, really good, because again, you can see things in so much detail. There's an LED light underneath it. You get an absolute fantastic view of what you're actually working. You've got to get used to looking ahead like this and working down here, as opposed to doing this. That takes some getting used to. I would recommend a microscope if you're doing some very detailed, some very sort of micro pave work, or doing some gorgeous engraving work. But for normal day-to-day, personally, I would use an optivisor. What diopter is this? This is a 4. You can get 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. So a 7 diopter is one of the greatest magnifications. You have a very shallow depth of field. That's a 4. You get about 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches of your sight that is in focus. So yes, get one of those first. Get your work up to standard, looking through one of those. And if your eyesight is getting really bad, or you want to do some really fine micro pave work, invest in a microscope. I wouldn't really go for any sort of unbranded, cheap microscopes that are out there, because you're looking through these microscopes day in, day out. If the optics are absolutely rubbish, you're going to ruin your eyes even more. So get something like a Leica, which is absolutely brilliant. GRS style the Leica, or you can get a Meiji. I've got a second-hand Meiji downstairs. It's as scarce as rocking horse poop to get a second-hand one. But the thing is, put the feelers out there, try and get a good second-hand one. And that's what I did. But they do cost quite a bit. But these are only about 50, 60 pounds, perhaps not even that. But do it with a optivisor first of all. But yeah, good question. Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry, I was just looking at some of your answers to your question about the background.
Okay. I'm saying at the entry.
Yeah. James is asking, after pickling my silver, it becomes white on the surface. Is there a way to remove this in areas I can't access with my mop?
The white is going to be the fine silver. So it's sterling silver, goes in the pickle, the acid, that removes a very, very thin layer of copper. So you're left with that gorgeous white. All you got to do is just try and get in there and polish it. The best thing that I know of would be perhaps get like a cotton bud with a little bit of rouge. You can buy some powdered rouge these days, mix up a little bit of water, a little bit of washing up liquid, or a little bit of soap with it. That breaks down the surface tension of the water. The rouge will mix up, put it on the end of a cotton bud and use that to get into the inaccessible areas. Cotton bud, or get a cocktail stick with some cotton wool and spin the cocktail stick in the cotton wool to get a little bit of coating on the end of the cocktail stick. Again, a little bit of rouge moistened. That will get into the nooks and crannies as well. And also what are they called? Polishing threads, thrumming threads, something like that. Very hard to find again. I know HS Walsh in the UK sell them. Again, that's just like strands of very fine string that again you perhaps would rub your rouge up and down it. You thread that through a hole, and then you would move that up and down then to polish the inaccessible areas. Those would be about your best sort of ways of doing it. Sometimes your little pendant motor brushes don't get into those nooks and crannies. Cotton bud or the end of a cocktail stick spun around on a bit of cotton wool to get that little bit of sort of cotton wool on the end with a bit of polish, and that should be your best bet. I think we've got time for
I just want to read this one. So thinking about your safety concern. Gina's asking, I'm struggling to use my hand torch to solder 18 karat gold prongs. I have a concern to get gas plus oxygen torch in my flat. I looked at a hydrogen torch. It's too expensive to buy without knowing much.
Hydrogen torches, they are good. They are pretty safe. And they are expensive. That would be your best bet if you're within a flat, because you're not going to really want compressed gas bottles, air or oxygen or propane in a flat. So yeah, the micro welders, the hydrogen torch is going to be the best. Yes, they are expensive, but yes, you can buy them secondhand again. That are going to be in the region of about £800-900. They're a lot of money, but if you consider the cost of a little Smith's little torch, quite reasonable. But you have to have the flashback arresters, you have to have the valves, you've got your gas bottles, you've got the rentals, you've got the refills. I'm sure even a Smith's little torch setup is going to set you back close to about £800-900 in total. You can get an oxycon, an oxy converter from Tufnells here in the UK, and that instead of a compressed cylinder of oxygen, but you still need that propane, you still need that other cylinder. So yes, I would perhaps go towards like a micro welder, get quite a reasonable ones. I know Lawson Car here in the UK, I don't have any more details, but I know Lawson Car used to sell one for about £500. But they're very, very good. I've used one myself. I couldn't really get on with it. The flame was too small for my liking. But yeah, hydrogen torches are going to be your best answer in that sort of confined situation. Do we have time for one more?
Ooh, yes, okay. After silver etching with ferric nitrate granules, can you keep the solution for the future, or do you have to make a new solution for every time? How do you dispose of ferric nitrate? This is Andreas.
Okay, so I think the best bet there would be to keep it in a closed container so it doesn't evaporate. Keep it in the dark as well, because I know sometimes these chemicals become affected by ultraviolet light. Sealed in the dark. You obviously then have to dispose of it when its etching abilities becomes just unreasonable. Obviously, when you have it new, it's quick, it'll etch rather quick. Then obviously, as you keep using it, and you can use it more than once, you can use it several times, depending on how much etching you're actually doing. How do you dispose of it? I would then perhaps put it into some cat litter, which would then get and dry it off completely. Then you'd have to then take it to your local authority waste. What are they called? Local authority waste disposal place. What's Penatha called? Tip. Take it to the tip or the dump and say what you got, and just to see what you can do to get rid of it. But never put it in the rubbish. Never ever put it down the sink or anything like that. But cat litter is pretty good because that will absorb all the moisture. Okay, I think we got time for some. Okay, yeah, these little cupboards here. What are we going to put in these, Louise? What do people have come up with ideas?
George is suggesting books on the shelves.
Books, yeah, good idea.
Ellen,
yeah.
I like this one. Antique tools. Bully on Bully has said, I will send you something for your boxes.
Oh, yes, please. Good man. You have my address, I hope, but thank you very much. I'd love to put something in these, yeah.
Yep. Matthew is saying old crucibles, well used, would look nice and covered, planting them perhaps. Yeah. Nancy is saying, put you at the bench signing both of them. You can put a couple of old tools in them. Phoenix 80, jewellery, tools, or pictures of your nieces and nephews.
Oh, there's cute. There's cute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the tools is a good idea. I think you came up with the idea of putting perhaps something that I need to access, perhaps doing these demonstrations or something like that. That would be quite good. Yeah, they're going to be painted. The background is going to be stained. These are going to be stained as well, but we didn't get around to actually doing that. So I think that's about it. The hour's up. Thank you all very much for coming on today. It may be looking slightly different the next time we come on. I'm going to try and plan this again for next Wednesday, same time, 3 o'clock. Is that okay, Louise? Yep. Excellent. So again, about the same sort of time, 3 o'clock next week. Do appreciate all your questions. Louise obviously doesn't know an awful lot about jewelry just yet. So it's really interesting because she can't really vet the questions saying, oh, Andrew won't know that one, or that's a hard question. So Louise has just thrown me all these questions, and it's really, really interesting hearing all the types of, especially the torches. People seem to like the torches, don't they?
As well. Lots of soldering
and soldering ones as well. So we actually quite like that, don't we?
There's absolutely loads of unanswered questions here. So sorry we didn't get through them all again.
Yes. So thank you all very much for joining us. We will go back through all the questions. Who's messaging me? Okay. Yeah. So we've also got some wonderful tools that have just been delivered as well.
Sorry, last minute.
Oh, hang on.
Read it out.
Yes.
Mark wants to know, have you started your book yet? And if not, why not?
We were only talking about this yesterday. Mark, it's up here. It's all up here still. I have ideas, and I really got to put it. I know, we're on lockdown here in the UK. We've been on lockdown for about 3 weeks now. We've got about at least another 3 weeks to come. Yes, Mark, I do apologize. It's going to get down on paper, isn't it? Perhaps I should really spend more time doing this. The problem is, wrong one. There we go. That's better. I spend all my time working. So poor Louise is sometimes, a lot of the times, is being like forgotten. And she said, "What about me? You're always working. Can we do this? Can we have a drink tonight instead?" So.
Don't blame me.
So yeah, I will start it, Mark. You do nag me, yes. I must get it down. I must do it. So yeah, I do have several ideas for books. It's going to be several years, I'm sure, before they actually get into fruition and get published. But I really must make a conscious effort this year to actually put them down, my ideas and thoughts onto paper. But thank you for that, Mark. Right, everybody, thank you so much for coming on today. Really do appreciate all the questions. And we shall see you again next week, the same time, Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Anything you need to say, Louise? Anything else you need to, anything at all?
No, I'm just reading through these. People are still coming up with suggestions for the boxes, photos of your pets. I like that. You can put Bunny in there. Bunny at the bench.
Anyway, but I like the idea about the old tools and putting some nice bits, nice posh tools, perhaps a bit, whatever. Anyway, yeah, I got a whole load of new tools coming as well. We're going to have a bit of a play around with that. Look again on YouTube for some sort of unboxings and some things like that's going to happen as well. And also on At The Bench. If you want to go and check out At The Bench, we got this way, isn't it? So visit atthebench.com. It's our online jewelry training website. Register for a free view, or you can join it for a year. You can join it for a month. You can cancel whenever you want. So go and check that out. And in the meantime, I'll do another schedule for next week. Leave some comments as well. If you want to do anything with tools, I'm a bit limited today because I've only just started to put tools on the bench. And I got a nice little area over here now with some nice polishing machines and my rolling mill and my vices and that sort of thing. So I can do more in this studio. So any questions you want me to answer when it comes to tools, just let me know and I can go and get the tools and bring them to the bench. Anything you specifically want me to show technique-wise, like the riveting question we had, be very difficult to sort of organize within 5 or 10 minutes. But that is something that, yes, we can do on a separate film for YouTube, showing you how to rivet, and cold connections are always a really popular. So again, contact me. Anything you want me to show you on YouTube, please do. Really would appreciate it. Any questions, leave them on the chat box. A few minutes before we come on air, we'll go through them and we can get started. But anyway, in the meantime, my name's Andrew Berry for At The Bench's YouTube channel. I shall pass you over to Louise to say goodbye.
My name's Louise Berry. Goodbye.
So there we go. Take care, everybody, and we will see you all very soon. In fact, this time next week. Take care. Bye-bye.